Back in Chapter 1, we talked about prepositions, and we have consistently talked about prepositional phrases as we've gone through the last couple of weeks of grammar. It's the thing that I've been telling you to cross out before you try to identify other parts of the speech. Today we're actually going to take a closer look at those prepositional phrases, though, and kind of what they do in the sentence, what their purpose is, and what things make up a prepositional phrase. A prepositional phrase always includes the preposition and the object of the preposition. It starts with the preposition, ends with the object of the preposition, and then it might have some modifiers of that object in between. So some examples are to the pool. To is the preposition. The pool is the object of the preposition. The is an adjective that modifies pool. At the Jackson's house. At is our preposition. House is the object of the preposition. The and Jackson's tell us which house. Instead of them, instead is a compound preposition, instead of, and then them is the object of the preposition. The object of the preposition is always a noun or a pronoun, and it always comes at the end of the prepositional phrase. So Clarice went to the ballet. Clarice is our subject, went is the verb. To the ballet is a prepositional phrase. To is the preposition that always starts our prepositional phrase. Ballet is the object of the preposition, and then everything in between goes with it. You want to be careful that if there's a word that comes after it, that you are not distracted by that. So if we look in that second one, Heidi and Mrs. Braun worked at the polls today, this one right here. Heidi and Mrs. Braun are our subject. Worked is the verb. At is the preposition, and so our prepositional phrase would go from at to the object of the preposition. So at what did they work? Well, they worked at the polls, so polls is the object of the preposition. There's still another word over here, but it is not part of that prepositional phrase. Today is actually an adverb that tells us when they worked. It's not part of the prepositional phrase. At the polls is the prepositional phrase. Again, it starts with the preposition, it goes to the object of the preposition, and that is it, and it's everything in between. You can have compound objects of prepositions, just like we have compound just about everything else as far as our grammar parts of speech go. If we look at this first example, on the plaza, a guitarist sang for Victor and me. For is the preposition, for whom, Victor and me. So we have two objects that are the object of the preposition there. In the next one, we have three. In AD 79, the city of Pompeii was buried beneath lava, rock, and ashes. Beneath is our preposition. Beneath what? All three of these things. So lava, rock, ashes are all our objects of the preposition. You can even have a prepositional phrase that modifies the object of another prepositional phrase. So before, when I said it modified the verb, this one actually modifies another prepositional phrase. So if we look at our example, next to the door of the old barn stood two horses. Of the old barn is telling us which door we're talking about. But door is the object of the preposition to. So next to the door, next to is a compound preposition. Next to the door, which door? The door of the old barn. So of the old barn is a prepositional phrase that modifies door, which was part of this prepositional phrase. So it doesn't always have to modify the verb. In fact, often it won't. So it can modify all sorts of parts of speech in our sentences. And it can even have another prepositional phrase within it. This last sentence here, meet us at the Museum of Science and Industry. At where? Or at what? The Museum of Science and Industry. Which museum? The one of Science and Industry. So we've got of Science and Industry, which is a prepositional phrase within this one, at the Museum of Science and Industry. It's not two separate prepositional phrases like this was, for the fact that Museum of Science and Industry is the proper noun for this museum that we're going to. So you would include all of that if you were telling me what the noun was. Sometimes prepositional phrases in that last example are part of a proper noun or part of a compound word. So it just kind of is the whole thing now. So for example, Strait of Hormuz of Hormuz is telling us which strait or where the strait is, but that is actually the proper noun, the proper name of the strait. We don't just call it the strait and then someone says where. You actually call it the Strait of Hormuz. Same thing with Stratford-on-Avon, which is where William Shakespeare was. Stratford-on-Avon is the location. On Avon is a prepositional phrase, but this is the proper noun of the place, so you would say it all. Same thing with hole-in-one. Those of you who are golfers or have seen golf before, if you're lucky enough to get a hole-in-one, in-one is a prepositional phrase, but this whole thing is what we call that, so it's a compound noun. University of Pittsburgh, University of Missouri, all of those things that are the complete proper noun might have little prepositional phrases in it. When we diagram prepositional phrases, you want to make sure that you drop the line down, kind of like we did with indirect objects. There are just a couple of differences. So your prepositional phrase is going to have to go off of whatever part of speech it's modifying. And then you always put the preposition on the little slanted line that goes down to the object. So here we have Clarice went to the ballet. Clarice is our subject. Went is the verb. To the ballet tells us where she went. And so because it's modifying the verb and telling us where that happens, the line goes off of the verb. So you draw a line down just like we did with indirect objects. Our object of the preposition goes on the straight line just like our indirect object did. The only difference now is that we put the preposition here. So it's not an indirect object because we have the preposition here. We know it's a prepositional phrase. I left off the just to keep this kind of simple, but the tells us which ballet, so it would actually be a slanted line off of ballet and it would act as an adjective, and we haven't really started diagramming those yet, so we will get to that. Let's look at one more. A bunch of people ate pizza. Our subject is bunch. Ate is the verb. What did they eat? Pizza. So this is our direct object. Of people tells us more about the bunch. And so the line has to go off of that. It's not modifying our verb anymore. It's modifying our subject. And so we draw the slanted line down. The object of the preposition goes on the straight line. The preposition goes on the slanted line. So we know bunch of people ate pizza. Again, a is an adjective, and it would go right here on another slanted line as an adjective describing bunch. I am not having you diagram sentences right now in the next activity that I ask you to do, but you will have some practice identifying the prepositional phrases that are properly done and also identifying the object of the prepositional phrase in your next step.